Here I am, coming at you live from the past.
Man to woman, woman to man, man to woman, penis in vagina. Man to woman, woman to man, man to woman, penis in vagina.
Hello, Alec here. This is the Feuilleton. Sorry about the radio silence on my end. I've had some life things get in the way. Most of them pretty good. I have a new job du jour. But unfortunately, it's taken me away from making content, as they say. I figured I would chime in with a brand new video on the subject of historical accuracy and fidelity to source material. Does it matter? People seem to think it does, somewhat, viciously at times. Some folks are sticklers for it. The idea that a narrative must stick to the strictures of how an event or a group of events transpired, either historically or literally, higgledy-piggledy, down to the minutest detail. I have some issues with this. Namely, there is this idea that what works in the retelling of a historical event might not necessarily work narratively or cinematically. Moreover, I am of the belief that a film exists separately from a work of literature or historical text, and that if one wants a historical account of something, one is better off consulting said historical text, or even watching a documentary. Let us extrapolate this even further with the following hypothesis. History, by its very nature, is chancy, mired in happenstance, and almost always lost in translation owing to what I like to describe as a millennia-long game of telephone, wherein the original event is distorted and malformed to such a degree that we can have no real way of knowing what transpired. Also, history can be woefully boring. We can yet extrapolate this even further. Even if one was to stick to the historical texts religiously, if one was to rely solely on actual eyewitness testimony from the event itself, and furthermore was somehow able to translate this into something that transcended the dry, clinical nature of a historical text into a veritable masterwork of visual storytelling, as soon as the camera starts rolling, history is already distorted and placed under an inherent bias. Indeed, there is nothing natural or real about being in front of a camera. I could even argue that history is distorted and bent out of true as soon as pen is put to paper. All we really have is the present. Case in point, I am coming at you from the past right now. I think a lot about the King James Bible. Perhaps the most widely read version of the good book in human history. It's literally nothing more than the word of God according to the whims of King James himself, and how he wanted the commoners to interpret the Bible as a means to give himself more power. One could argue that that's how religion was founded to begin with. The Bible itself is cobbled together through hand-me-downs and words of mouth dating back to prehistory, or how Fox News can regularly distort current events to fit their own apocalyptic death cult narrative. Of course, there are numerous examples in cinema where flagrant disregard for history has made for some awkward and downright stupid presentation that if the screenwriters and producers were so intent on telling an interesting story that they could have just stuck to the facts and the film would have been better off. I think about A Beautiful Mind a lot in this respect. I think of how much more of an interesting film it could have been if they focused on the fact that the man was closeted, that he was caught with his hand down a few too many trousers at a few too many public restrooms at a point in time where this was verboten. Or perhaps the most egregious example that I can think of, Wolfgang Petersen's mega abortion Troy from 2004. I'm still mad about this. The Iliad was right there, you know? And if you've read either of Homer's epic poems, the Iliad or the Odyssey, they hold up. They're so exciting to read even today. They're so good. like the way the gods are depicted, especially in the Iliad, like it's inherently cinematic. It's so good and it's exciting. And okay, Troy took the gods out of it to put it on a more human playing field, right? And that's fine. That could have worked. But even without the gods aiding and abetting in the affairs of men, all they had to do was stick to what was written, and the film would have been a true historical epic, I'm convinced, instead of just some terrible, dumb film with one really good scene from Peter O'Toole in it. I'm still mad about this. I back in 2003, 2004, after I had read both the Iliad and the Odyssey, I had fantasy cast this film in my mind. I was kind of refreshing IMDb constantly because I really was excited about the prospect of an Iliad film. And all of the cast members, I think namely Sean Bean as Odysseus at that point in time, I just thought it was a perfect bit of casting. And they fucked it up. They fucked up everything. It's a terrible film. Oh, as a bonus, Romeo plus Juliet by Baz Luhrmann, wherein Paul Rudd's Paris and Lady Montague are not killed off, and they're even given dialogue at the end of the film. I fucking hate Baz fucking Luhrmann so fucking much. Shifting gears. What about fidelity to source material? This is perhaps even more of a touchy subject in an age of MCU blowhardiness, incel nerd rage, and the figurative nostalgia-based bukkake-thon that is our current cinematic age, wherein everything seems to be based on a previously existing IP, with innumerable films, offshoots, TV shows, YouTube shows, NFTs, and stone tablets in the works from now until the inevitable and inexorable death of the universe itself. And I'd even imagine then that Disney might eke out a few more soft relaunches vis-a-vis Space Dust. My take on this is that fidelity to source material does not necessarily matter as long as the ever-elusive tone of the original is kept intact. I think about what is, in my mind, the all-time best cinematic adaptation of a novel, and that would be the Coen brothers' No Country for Old Men. As I am a millennial, cisgendered, heteronormative man of a certain age, it stands to reason that I have read everything that Cormac McCarthy has ever written, including but not limited to his used toilet paper. And yes, aside from the grand, sweeping, nigh romantic elements found in his Border trilogy, his novels, I think, are largely unfilmable. Indeed, The Road, for example, has really only about 3 or 4 actual events that transpire throughout its duration, and the rest of it is bridged by McCarthy's inimitable, gorgeous prose. So you better hope in your film adaptation that those 3 or 4 events are depicted with this gut punch level force and attention to detail and tone. Needless to say, they were not, and John Hillcoat's film adaptation from 2008, 2009, I want to say, really suffered because of this. Inherent studio meddling notwithstanding. No Country, however, is absolutely perfect. On the same end of the spectrum as The Road, there is Michael Winterbottom's joyless adaptation of Jim Thompson's seminal exploration of a small-town sociopath, The Killer Inside Me. While Winterbottom's depiction is almost painstakingly faithful to Thompson's original novel from a screenplay perspective, it lacks all of Thompson's humor. The gleefully psychotic, unreliable narrator who seems to revel in watching it all burn while turning a kind face to the world at large. Winterbottom's film, however, is kind of a joyless, stone-faced slog, all gray-hued and depressing. The Coen brothers somehow managed to capture that sense of Old Testament Gnostic violence that pervades all of McCarthy's work. The idea that evil can emerge out of nothing and go back into nothing with little to no explanation, that evil exists outside of time and space, and that closure is not only a myth, but a fool's errand. To this day, I feel that No Country for Old Men is the greatest film adaptation of a novel ever made, and it is most definitely the greatest Best Picture winner even of all time. Now, to hoist myself upon my own petard, the grand irony of it is that they actually filmed everything exactly as it was written, whereas, John Hillcoat did the same thing, and the results for The Road were middling at best. Let's go for a hot take, shall we? I cannot wait to be skewered in the comments because of this, as I will happily die on this hill. Peter Jackson improved upon the Lord of the Rings trilogy with his original adaptation. I feel it. I love it. Come at me, bro. Yes, Tolkien had a fantastic imagination, but one must remember that he was first a linguist, and so much of his novels centered around world building. I remember there's a chapter in Lord of the Rings that is strictly devoted to a river. It's like 8 pages of a river. History of the river. The direction of where it flows, how it formed. And a lot of the ancillary elements, such as lacunae, the random breaking into song and whatnot, it's all a bit clunky and awkward. Also, fuck Tom Bombadil. Fuck Tom Bombadil. I hope someone makes another adaptation where Tom Bombadil is murdered by a hentai monster. So I remain convinced that the Coens could have deviated from the source material and the results could have been the same, largely owing to their command of and reverence for the tone of the original novel. So this topic, in a way that is much akin to the subject of history itself, is filled with contradictions, and there seem to be exceptions to every rule. At the end of the day, though, there are but 3 certainties in this crazy world: pee-pee, poo-poo, and death. Kisses. Thank you for watching.
Man to woman, woman to man, man to woman, penis and vagina. Man to woman, woman to man, man to woman, penis and vagina.